I would like to introduce now the speakers of this morning, starting with Dr. Abbie Vandivere, sorry. She has worked as paintings conservator at the Mauritshuis in The Hague since 2015. She and Jolijn Schilder are currently restoring the steer by Paulus Potter in front of the public at the museum. In 2018-2020, Abbie was the head researcher responsible for the technical examination of Vermeer's Girl with the Pier earring. She received a PhD from the University of Amsterdam in 2013, a postgraduate diploma in paintings conservation from the Cartloud Institute in London in 2005, and a BA Bachelor in Arts from Princeton University in 2001. Welcome, Abbie. We continue with Jolijn Schilder.
Goedemorgen, everyone, or good morning. My name is Jolijn Schilder. This is my colleague Abbie Vandivere, and we are paintings conservators or conservators at the Mauritshuis Museum in The Hague. We are currently treating this painting, De Boel by Paulus Potter, or known in Dutch as De Stier. In our museum, this painting is a crowd favorite, especially with children, because it shows a subject that is not often depicted in Dutch paintings at such a huge scale. Farm animals in a landscape which are almost life-sized. It is hard to believe that the bull is almost 400 years old. It was painted in 1647 by Paulus Potter, and this portrait of him also hangs in the Mauritshuis galleries. Potter worked in The Hague and Amsterdam. Potter was only 22 years old when he painted the bull, and unfortunately he died at the early age of 28. But in that time he had made about 100 paintings. Potter became most famous for his cattle pieces, both large and small. But what set him apart from other artists of his time is that cattle are the main subject of his paintings. His paintings have no other meaning than depicting animals in a landscape. There are no historical or biblical themes, and the landscape is just a backdrop for the cattle. Now, if we compare that to other artists of the mid-17th century, like Albert Cuyp, in his paintings, cows are just part of a specific landscape or a specific place. Cuyp treated the cows like compositional elements that he repeated and moved around to create a harmonious composition. The fact that the cows are subordinate to the rest of the painting is reflected in the way that he painted the cows. Here we see details of some of Cuyp's cows. Now you, as cow experts, might already notice that their heads look a bit odd and rather rectangular. If we look at the heads of actual cows, like the photo on the left, you see that their heads are more or less triangular, with a large jaw and a relatively small muzzle. Albert Cuyp's cows, on the contrary, have more boxy heads, where the muzzle is slightly too rectangular in relation to the jaw. Real cows only have such rectangular heads when they open their mouths, either to chew or to moo, but in Cuyp's paintings, their mouths are usually closed. This important detail was either not known by Cuyp, or it was lost in translation, because he kept copying the same cows over and over again, rather than going out in the field and studying the actual animals themselves. Other 17th century painters had a similar approach to Cuyp. Here are some examples where cows and bulls are again depicted as part of a landscape, or biblical or mythological scenes. Most of these artists are known for their landscape paintings, but even the famous Rembrandt depicted an ox, unfortunately a dead one, who had been butchered. At least Rembrandt paid close attention to the anatomy. Which brings us to our question that we will focus on in the rest of this presentation. did Paulus Potter paint a realistic, anatomically correct bull?
It's often believed that the bull in our painting is a realistic representation of a specific animal, perhaps a prize-winning bull. And part of our research has been looking into whether or not that's true. We do know that Potter paid close attention to the natural behavior of animals. He spent lots of time standing in the field observing them. His wife described that he was never without a sketchbook, and when they went on walks together, they'd have to stop all the time so he could sketch the animals that he saw along the way. These are some of his drawings and prints, depicting bovines of different sexes, ages, and in different positions. And the print on the right even shows a cow urinating. Potter made his sketches outside from life, but he didn't make his paintings outdoors. He took the drawings back to his studio and incorporated the different elements into his paintings. But does Potter's thorough study of the animals mean that even his life-sized bull is anatomically correct? No. You cow experts might see it already, but the steer is pieced together from animals of different ages. At first glance, he looks like a yearling, but his large dewlap, that flap of skin below his neck, belongs to an older bull. The horns suggest a bull of about 2 years old. It has 6 large adult teeth, which is common for a bull aged between 3 and 4. Also, the structure of the body looks unbalanced. His forequarters are powerful and well developed, but the hindquarters are less muscled and his hips look rather flat. Also, the bull is standing in a slightly distorted pose. The middle of the body is shown side on, but the hindquarters are twisted towards us. From this, we can conclude that Potter compiled his bull from various studies of bulls of different ages. He selected his best preparatory sketches and tried to depict an idealized bull that surpasses reality.
Now, in trying to create a painting of the ideal bull, Paulus Potter made many artistic choices. We have carried out a lot of scientific research as part of the restoration of the bull at the Mauritshuis. Our conservation studio, which we call the stall, is seen over here. Our research questions included: how did Potter paint the bull and why? And did he change his mind as he was painting? Here is the bull again, as it looked before restoration. But this is not what the painting looked like when Paulus Potter started it. He started with a smaller composition, painted on 2 pieces of canvas, attached together. That suggests that it started off as a painting of just the one bull, perhaps the bull with a cow, but without the trees, the farmer, and the other animals. During the painting process, Potter enlarged the composition by sewing 3 strips of canvas around that first middle piece. To investigate the canvas and to find out how exactly Potter attached those strips, we took an X-ray of the painting. Here, the bull, the painting, has been taken off the wall and has been turned around to face it. You can see the back of the painting with the wooden stretcher framework. In the red circle, you can see the portrait of Potter looking down on us from above the door. Now, an X-ray of a painting is quite comparable to X-rays of the human body or an animal body. An X-ray beam is emitted from a machine, it goes through the body and is then captured on a piece of film. All the areas that light up on the X-ray film are denser or heavier material than what's around it. Here, we see the skull and the upper jaw of a cow, and because the bone is denser than the flesh, it appears white. And this is the X-ray of the painting, in which the denser, heavier paint appears white. In this X-ray of the bull, the heavier material usually corresponds to lead white, which is a heavy powder that was mixed with oil to make a white oil paint. The X-ray also shows how Potter attached the strips around the smaller central composition. The green arrows show the seams between the pieces of canvas and how they were sewn together with a whip stitch. Potter used a knife to apply a grey ground layer and a kind of speckle over the seams to make everything blend together and to give it a flat and even surface. The X-ray also shows us some interesting things about the bull. We can see that Potter made changes while he was painting. On the left you see a detail of the painting as it is today, and on the right you can see white paint underneath the surface. By comparing them, we see that Potter made the changes while he was painting. The bull's back was once lower, and the pattern on the coat had more white, both at his back and down his belly. In the middle of the white stripe, the brown patch was once an oval-shaped form, and it was loose from the rest of the brown coat. This also proves that the bull isn't a portrait of an individual specific animal, but it is an idealized bull made up of parts of several animals.
Potter made many more changes that we detected during our scientific examination of the painting. Here we're using another technology called infrared photography, and this allows us to see black carbon-containing materials below the paint surface. In this infrared image, we're looking through the upper layers of paint to see the changes that Potter made. And here we're concentrating on this area, the hindquarters. On the right is the infrared photo, which shows that at an early stage, the whole back end of the bull was lower and positioned slightly further back than it was ultimately painted. The tail was longer, and under the stomach is a round shape that looks a little like an udder. Hope you can see that here. But that's not completely clear. Maybe it was meant to be a cloud. But next to it are other parts of his anatomy, the testicles, that were much bigger. And we'll come back to that in a moment. Another technology was used to detect the chemical elements in the paint. And here it is, macro XRF. So this machine produces an image that shows the distribution of elements related to specific pigments, like lead in lead white. Pigments are the colored powders that the artist mixed with oil to make their paint. And iron is associated with earth pigments, literally dug up from the earth since the crust of the earth is so rich in iron. So most earth pigments are brown, like ochre, umber, or sienna. Here's an example of the image of iron from the bull. The parts that appear white have the most iron. And it's no surprise that we find a lot of brown earth pigments in the bull, the cow, and also in the tree and landscape. And now, let's zoom into the area that I just mentioned, the testicles. In the iron image on the left, you can see how much bigger they were when Potter started the painting, before deciding to cover them up with sky and paint smaller ones. And if we look at this image of a Simmentaler bull, we can see that even Potter's first attempt wasn't impossible. But perhaps shrinking the testicles was also part of his aim of painting the ideal bull.
All of the scientific techniques we used prove our theory that Potter was trying to paint this ideal bull. His first attempt was a skinny, younger animal without any gender-specific attributes. It had no dewlap under the neck, and possibly different attempts at either an udder and then larger and smaller testicles. When Potter expanded the painting by adding those strips of canvas around the edges, he developed the bull into the animal we know today. One of our questions was whether the cow, who you see lying down on the left, was part of the initial composition or not. Our latest research suggests that she was, but it needs further investigation. Here she is, looking straight at us. Her white face is painted with the pigment lead white, which allowed Potter to apply the paint thickly and to work it up on the surface like a sculpture. Here is a picture taken in raking light, which means the light is held parallel to the painting and shows the surface texture. You can see that her white face has more texture than her brown body, which has to do with the properties of the paint itself, but it might have also been a conscious choice. As you can see, the white fur of the male bull has a lot of texture and roughness, but also in the brown paint, Potter attempted to give it texture by applying lines as brushstrokes. The differences between the way he approached the fur of the cow and the bull probably has to do with guidelines on how a female animal should be painted as compared to a male. But where might Potter have learned about those guidelines? Perhaps from a book like Karel van Mander's Foundation of the Noble and Free Art of Painting, in which a chapter is devoted on how to paint cattle, animals, and birds. To paint a male, a bull, he mentions features like the curly hair, small, short horns, ears with thick, tufted hair, a long tail, and a hanging dewlap. In contrast, to paint a female cow, he used adjectives like slender, sleek, delicate, and graceful limbs. Even though we're not certain that Potter read this book, Karel van Mander's guidelines show that he must have been aware of the idea about the ideal bull and the ideal cow that were floating around in the 17th century.
So our goal in the restoration is to preserve the bull for future generations and to return the painting to Potter's original intention. We're working with a small team of conservators and interns, including Marie Godot, who's here today, and who helped us research the texture of the bull. Here's some action shots of us at work. But why is restoration needed? For aesthetic reasons. So fortunately, the canvas is in good condition, but the painting doesn't look as good as it could. Specifically, a varnish applied to the surface during previous restoration treatments has become yellow and patchy, something you can see here in the light parts of the painting, like the sky. If we look at this detail from the bull's coat, we can see remains of yellow-brown varnish in the depths of the brushstrokes. There are also discolored retouchings, which are paint applied during earlier restorations to cover up damage, and these have changed color over time. So these two brown patches on the bull's flank are not part of the pattern on his coat. They're actually old damages that were filled and retouched by the last restorer. But the good news is that fortunately the rest of the foreground and the animals is in good condition. So we're currently in the stage of removing this yellow varnish. And here's a picture showing the left side of the painting that's been cleaned and the right part with the varnish still on it. And I hope you agree that the colors look brighter and more intense. So we divided the painting into manageable sections to work on at one time, almost like how a butcher would divide up a beef cattle. And we remove the varnish section by section. So I'd like to show you a video showing how we remove the varnish in the cow's face. And I hope this plays automatically, or else how do I start it? There we go. There's no sound. So here we are applying a tissue that's been impregnated with very mild solvents. And we apply it to the surface for 1.5 minutes, covering it up with a piece of plastic. Once it's been there for 1.5 minutes, we carefully remove it, and all of the varnish has been absorbed into this tissue. And you can see the difference. Then we go in with cotton swabs with also the same mild solvent, and then we remove the residues of varnish that are in the depths of those brushstrokes. And here we are checking with an ultraviolet lamp to see whether any of the remains of varnish which glow are still sitting in the surface. So here is the, I won't say before and after. The left half has been cleaned and the right half still has varnish on it. So the rest of our restoration treatment will involve removing the old varnish and retouchings. And after this, the painting will be in what we call stripped state. Some old damages will be visible, and we will fill and retouch them so that they disappear again. To give the painting good saturation and gloss, we'll apply a new varnish layer, but one that will yellow less quickly than the old ones. We want to share this project with everyone, and you can all come and see it. We are going to be restoring this painting in the Mauritshuis, in the galleries until the end of 2025. And we're trying to reach a broad public, so everyone, young and old, can learn something by seeing the restoration. So please tell your friends and come visit. We regularly post updates on the Mauritshuis social media about the progress of the research and treatment. And every Friday at 2 o'clock, we have a Q&A session. In October, 5 October, we'll have a Steer Saturday with activities for the whole family. And in 2027, this project will culminate in an exhibition with the steer in the spotlight. So we hope that you and your friends and your family will come visit us several times during our project. But for now, thank you for coming, and thanks to everyone who's made this possible.